Pat Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog, the American Express DFS preview. We got Underdog Drafts, DraftKings picks, ownership. We're building lineups. Alex Blickle from FTN is on the line with me to talk this all through. First things first, as it pertains to the DraftKings slate this week, $14,200 Scottie Scheffler, who is as high as 3.1 to 1 to win this tournament now. How owned is he going to be? Because it's tough to make lineups with him.
Very tough to make lineups with him. I think it's also really kind of difficult to do ownership for this slate because if you don't get him right, you get like 30 guys wrong. So nailing Scottie's ownership is going to be a really key point to this week. And then, as you mentioned, it's hard to build lineups with him. And I think a lot of people are going to feel that way. But I also think a lot of people are going to feel like it's almost like a non-starter to even consider not using him, where they're not going to compare what a Scottie lineup looks like versus a non-Scottie lineup because they were just building a Scottie lineup the whole time.
Do you agree with my theory that, okay, so I will probably build a Scottie lineup on this show, but when I'm playing my full sets of lineups this week, I don't think I'm going to play any Scottie, which means, I don't know, can you win a GPP without Scottie even if Scottie wins?
Yeah, I think you can. It's going to be harder this week than in a week like the Tour Championship, for example, because the Tour Championship, you get a much smaller field. So, you have a pretty good chance of, even if Scottie wins, that you have, let's say, 3 of the top 5 guys. This is a 150-some man field. So getting that many guys up at the top and making up the bonus point equity that you lose from not having Scottie is definitely going to be harder this week. But it also means that you're getting a lot of higher quality players, and the cheap guys that are necessary to help fit Scottie. Maybe all Scottie lineups have like 4 of 6 or 3 of 6, and it's really, really tough to have a 6 for 6 with Scottie, and maybe it's not so tough to have a 6 of 6 without him.
Well, the 6, you get 3 guaranteed rounds. So theoretically, if you had Scottie plus 3 others inside the top 7, another guy who came 12th, and a missed cut, theoretically you could get away with that at this tournament, I think.
Yeah, I think that thought's a little bit overblown here, because if you have a missed cut, it also means you're probably missing out on all of the birdies that are being made. You're not missing a cut here just because you made too many bogeys. You're missing a cut here because you didn't have all of the birdies that everybody else has, since these are such birdie fest courses. So there is at least that element that makes it kind of makes up for the fact that you're getting 3 rounds from a missed cut instead of 2.
So what are we thinking for Scheffler? 30%?
Yeah, I'm thinking between 30 and 40 at the moment. I think it's weird. This is one of those where, like, usually in single entry contests, it's very clear if someone's going to be higher owned or lower owned in single entries than MME. This is not one of those. Like, this is one of the rare times where I could see him being significantly less owned in single entries, or I could see him being significantly more owned in single entries. And again, it's because I don't think that this is a decision that people are making largely based on, here are all of the possible lineups I can build, and now I'm going to choose between the Scottie lineups or the non-Scottie lineups. It's going to be people either just make the decision from go, I'm using him or I'm not, and then they build the rest of the lineup from there.
And that might be the proper move, too. Just say, I'm locking Scottie, and I'll figure out the goobers at the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also, like, save the Scottie decision for last. You can say, okay, I'm going to go look for the goobers, and if I have goobers that I really like, then I can confidently play Scottie. And if I don't have any goobers that I really like, then I'll go to a more balanced build.
And it does seem like the proper time to talk about these courses. They're 3 of the 4 easiest courses on tour. So it's not inconceivable that a bunch of guys, Zach Johnson, $6,100. This is a course where Zach Johnson could make a ton of birdies. That wouldn't be crazy this week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a weird course setup too, because when you think of birdie fest golf courses, you usually think of courses that, driving is less predictive than usual, and around the green play is less than predictive than usual, and all that really matters is iron play and maybe some putting. And you actually don't see that with our course fit model. We see a spike in the predictive value for both aspects of driving, distance and accuracy. We see a spike in iron play, as we would expect, but we also see a small spike in the predictive value for around the green play, which I think just means that you actually need a short game to help make birdies on some of the shorter par fours and the par fives, whereas usually around the green signal comes from, saving pars on more difficult golf courses. So at least from a course fit standpoint, it's not one where you would expect like just a bunch of, scrubs to contend. I think historically, the reason why we have so many long shots winning here is just because we have a lot of long shots playing here, and the courses do up the variance a little bit, but it's not because the courses bring the best players down.
No, it brings the bad players up.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And it's also like worth making the distinction that when I talk about course fit, when we talk about course fit over at FTN Fantasy, we're using a predictive model. So what we're trying to find is the skill sets that translate into success. So what is this player good at coming into the event? And then which of those skill sets translate to success? It's different than saying in order to win this week, a guy's going to have to putt really well, which is true, but that only helps you if you're able to predict who's going to putt really well. And at this course, we have putting's predictive value low as it usually is, but it's right in line with its typical predictive value. So no boost or penalty to putters this week.
Which is strange because these greens are notoriously easy, that you can make a lot of mid-range putts from here, which you think would benefit someone like Scheffler. I guess maybe sometimes he's just so close to the hole that it doesn't matter. But I do find it really strange. Of any tournament that we've seen Scottie play at over and over, this is weirdly his worst one.
Yeah, and I think it's because when you think of like what Scottie does so much better than everybody else, a lot of it is just he's so much more consistent than everybody else. And so when it's easier for the field to hit the ball to 25 feet and Scottie hits the ball to 15 feet, he's not gaining the same advantage that he usually gains when he's hitting the ball to 25 feet over and over and over again. And other guys are missing greens and making some bogeys. So definitely Birdie Fest is just harder for him to separate from the field, even though that's not necessarily what the course fit model says. But, Scottie is such an outlier that what the course fit model says, overall for everybody in mass is not always, perfectly applicable to him.
I made the comment to Jeff on the Picks and Bet show that I would feel more comfortable betting Scottie at plus 300 at Bay Hill in a signature event than I would at this event.
Yeah, I saw you say that, and I was nodding along. I thought it was a really good point, and I very much agree. And I think part of that too is because when you're talking about what it takes for Scottie to win, it's largely just, does Scottie play really well? And if he does, he's going to win. And if he doesn't, he's not. And that doesn't, the odds of that happening doesn't change based on who he's playing against and how many guys are in the field. So all that comes down to is, do you think he's more likely to play really well on a difficult course or an easy course? I think the answer is a difficult course.
Someone in the chat, John, says, what do you think about the new Canadian? Shurashan Yama. We went over him on the Monday show. You can go right to that part if you want to. He actually played with my golf coach on the mini tours in Canada 3 years ago. I got a text from my coach right after he saw the final result. He's like, this guy is a fucking grinder, and he is going to churn out top 40s at an alarming rate.
I saw you say that. So I looked up this guy, and I see a different picture. I see a guy who is actually pretty volatile, and maybe that's why he works so hard, because he knows what is like what he's capable of. He has seen himself play that well enough that he knows I should be doing that more often, and he's not getting quite the consistency that he'd like. Maybe he breaks through and finds consistency this year. It certainly seems like he doesn't need to necessarily make his A game better. He just needs to get his A game more often to be around for a while on tour. But I do see some encouraging signs from him. It looks like he's a pretty good player when he's on.
Yeah, he did say that, like, watch out for him at, like, Myrtle Beach, Puerto Rico, one of those events that he will contend in, which I was like, I've never heard of this guy before, so sure, why not?
I definitely believe that. You get him in a weaker field and he spikes and has one of his A games, and I think his A game is already, like, good enough to win that type of event.
Do you have any insight to the 3-course rotation? Is there any sort of strategy that you're utilizing with that? Like, do you like to stack the rotations? Like, hey, I want guys all playing La Quinta on the same day and try to maximize in case one of the courses weirdly plays easier. I mean, the weather report looks like it's going to pristine conditions. That's why they play at PGA West in January, because the conditions are almost always the same. But is there any strategy to that, or is that simply overthinking it?
When there's weather, when you're going to have different conditions on different days, I think it's worth it. We saw, I think it was last year at Torrey Pines, we saw the second day was like super, super windy, and the North Course surprisingly played really, really tough. It played as tough as the South course that day. After day one, it played predictably a lot easier. I actually was on the wrong side of that because my intuition was that I want to play the more difficult course on the more manageable day. But I think the point is when you have different conditions, that's when you open up an opportunity for one of the different rotations to be drastically better than the other one. When it's going to be perfect like this all week, as it is pretty much every single year here, I don't think there's any reason to do that kind of thing. Just play the guys you want to play.
Maximum gusts throughout the course of the week. That actually happens when the guys are very late on the course on Friday, and it will be 6 miles per hour wind.
Yeah, that sounds about right for this part of the country. What a nice time. I'm going to be watching that as like 2 feet of snow fall out the window. I'm going to see 6 miles per hour, perfectly sunny, 70 degrees. It's going to make me very jealous.
Reminder to everyone that I am going live now on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you got questions about anything golf related, tune in. I may even have a few viewers on the show if people want to hop on. I used to do this test when I worked at Fantasy that whenever there'd be new on-air talent that would come up to see if they were ready to go on air full-time or make cameos or whatever, they would go on with me, and they would get 2 separate tests. That they would get the friendly back and forth, like, hey, like, you're an expert, tell me about what you know, or the adversarial me, where I would just grill people with questions and get really mad if they didn't answer me just to see how they would hold up. Chris Meaney came out of that school, so shout out Chris Meaney. The other 4 did not do so well.
That's hilarious. I love Meaney. He's one of my all-time favorites in the industry. We worked together for a while at FTN. He's a fellow Philadelphia fan, a lot of the sports. So he and I are good buds.
So let's try to build out one of these Scottie lineups then, just to see how it looks. And we have Scottie at 14-2. That's nice. Now what do we do?
Yeah, now you kind of just have to scroll down. I think at most you can probably get one 8K player, but I think the key thing for people to understand is if you start with Scottie, you need to understand that the ownership projections that you are looking at, no matter what site you're getting your ownership projections from, is not going to be the ownership within Scottie lineups down here. So for example, like I think Mac Meisner 6,900 is going to be one of the more popular value plays this week. Let's say he's 15% owned overall. If you have Scottie, you can't think, okay, I can now just go to Meisner and already I'm getting a little bit contrarian because I've got a 15% guy. He's going to be in, let's say, 33%, 40% of Scottie Scheffler lineups. So if you're starting Scottie, finding a way to separate down here is a lot harder than just, the ownership projection that you're looking at. So what I would do if I were building a Scottie lineup is I'd start to get contrarian here. And one name I'll give you, Pat, that I really like this week is Dan Brown, $6,700. One of the lesser known guys so far, but he's a really good iron player, absolutely spikes with the putter, and just seems like a pretty good all-around guy. But more importantly, it's going to be very low owned, and he's the type of guy who is very clearly capable of the type of spike that he could contend from this lower price tag and actually help you to separate within these Scottie lineups.
Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code, the author, was in the mix last week at the Sony Open for a little bit. But how much of an emphasis are you putting on guys that played last week? Because overall, when you take a look at the top of these leaderboards year over year, it's a lot of guys that had a bit of warm-up, not guys coming in fresh from the offseason.
Yeah, I personally put very little weight on this. I think it's very easy to explain why guys who have played the week prior typically do well. And that's largely because historically, who has played in Hawaii? It's largely guys who were invited to Hawaii to play in the Tournament of Champions. So the guys who played in Hawaii on average are better than the guys who didn't. And we typically see that pattern year after year. The other point that I make here is if it was necessary to have already played to play well, then nobody would ever win in Hawaii because no one would play well and you'd have like a horrible winning score. But obviously guys show up and they play really well. Every guy's different. Some guys are absolutely fine, just getting there and playing for the first time in a while. Some guys know that they're not capable of that, so they spend 2-3 weeks practicing really, really hard and getting their game as ready as can be. So all these guys, I think, are true professionals, and they're ready to go as soon as they get to the course. and they know what they have to do personally to make sure that they're ready once they get there. And so personally, I put very little weight on who played last week.
All right, I like guys that played last week. Bit of warm-up. That's going to be the difference between you and I this week. When it comes to, it's not going to be only guys that played last week, but you give me a coin flip situation where I'm between two guys. If someone like played a little bit last week, like that's good enough for me. Like Lee Hodges. I like Lee Hodges this week. Someone who's played really well at this tournament over the years, was 6th. Shockingly, last week. Most of that was putting related, but he was T4 at the RSM as well to end the swing season. He's down here at $6,700 as well. I just want to throw in some guys that we could potentially use from down here. Chris Kirk is another. He missed the cut on the number, but this has historically been a very good tournament for Chris Kirk, who again played really well in the swing season, had 2 just kind of mediocre rounds at the Sony. And how much can you really take away from the Sony in terms of this guy played really well, this guy didn't play really well? Because these are not going to be the same conditions whatsoever.
Totally different conditions, and it's also only one event, right? So it's very easy to say, oh, we only have one event sample for this season. I'm just going to play the guys who did well last week. Of course, he's going to play well again this week, but it just doesn't work that way. I think one thing you can find, and you had the mouse over his name a moment ago. He's on the screen here, $6,500. Tom Hoagie.
Yeah,
One thing I do like doing here is finding guys who really like uncharacteristically struggled last year, and then showed signs that they found it. They used the break to really help themselves get it back. So like Tom Hoagie, Daniel Berger, those are names that come to mind that fit that category. Like if last week gave us a reason to believe that they are more back to their long-term form than the form that they finished last season in, that's really encouraging.
Should we use our guy here? Yeah,
it's not a terrible place to use him, right? Like the kind of courses that were named to you definitely fits this one this week, or these 3 this week.
Blades Brown is in this field. I think he's still playing in the Bahamas as we speak.
I believe so, yeah.
And say Mac Meisner's brother, I think, is winning in the Bahamas right now.
He is.
I don't need another M. Meisner on tour. It's going to be very confusing.
It will be confusing, but it also might lead to some guys thinking that they're playing a 20% on Meisner and then accidentally played the 1% on Meisner.
There we go. You Michael Block's in this field. Duffner. Oh, God bless you, Duffner. Still in the field after chipping it out of the rocks to win in 2016. What a hero. Beating Lingmerth in that playoff. How low would you go here building Scottie lineups? Is there any, like, I've played Lipsky at this course before, probably not going to do that again. Lonto Griffin showed some signs during the swing, but he's another one that just, he kind of went away over the past 18 months, but this was someone we were perpetually using week over week.
Yeah, I would try not to get this low. I think I would try to bottom out at someone like Tom Hoagie, but I would almost let that decision be made more by, is there anyone that I really want to prioritize in the 8K range, for example, let's say? Because like now you have a 6'7", 6'7", and a 6'5" in here, and suddenly
6'7".
we almost have 8,000 per our last 2 spots to use. So how low you go might just depend on, is there anyone in that 8K, even low 9K range that you really want to prioritize? And if there's not, then you can be a lot more strict about how low you go.
How much do you like these 8K guys, I guess, is the question. Who would you prioritize in this situation? Because none of them really stand out to me. The only one that does is Kitayama.
Yeah, there's no one here who stands out to me from a projection standpoint. Actually, Kitayama is very clearly our number 1 in this range, but he's also probably going to be one of the most popular in this range. So the guy who stands out to me is the most under-owned in this range, and I hate the fact that I'm bringing up this name, but Ricky Fowler seems like a really good play this week. He was excellent at the end of last season, was kind of really rounding into the form that he had back in 2023. And if we're getting that caliber of player at $8,400 and low ownership compared to a lot of the guys above him, that's really intriguing to me.
So we could do that, or we could upgrade from Tom Hoagie because we have around $8,000 per, and we could do something like Akshay and Daniel Berger. We could go Nick Taylor plays this tournament really well. He just had a pretty good week. No one's going to use Nick Taylor for the second consecutive week either.
Yeah, and that upper 7K range is really intriguing too. I mean, not just Berger, but Tia, Justin Rose, Adam Scott, Pearson Coody, Rico Hoey, like all these guys I think are really solid plays. So
would you rather use 2 of these guys than upgrade one of our other guys to the low 7,000s because I do see Matt McCarty here. I've bet Matt McCarty this week. He's only $7,200. I think that's a pretty decent play. If he can figure out how to make birdies, not double bogeys on the easiest holes on the course, he'd be in much better shape.
I believe that McCarty's going to be one of the highest GPP scores for us over at FTN. So I really like McCarty along with you. And I think he's a really solid play. The only thing that concerns me, and I don't do a ton of this type of analysis, is more just like I happen to see it. So I'm going to bring it up and ask what you think about it. McCarty made a ton of bombs last week on the greens. I think he had maybe like 6 40-footers in 4 days. And then he also missed a ton of putts that he should make where he was losing a full stroke with the missed putt. Do you think that makes it less likely that he putts well this week than someone who didn't make anything that he shouldn't have made last week, but also didn't miss any putts that he should have missed?
I think that just makes him, just someone who had an odd week on the greens. Historically, he makes bombs, so that's helpful. He's a very good putter, especially from in close most of the weeks. And when you get to one of the easier putting surfaces across 3 courses that the guys are going to play on tour, I do think that does put somewhat of a premium on the guys that make a ton of putts. Like if Denny McCarthy came 11th this week, you'd be like, yeah, makes a ton of sense. He probably made everything.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think you can also use the excuse for him that maybe the only reason he was missing those short putts was because of the wind, and he doesn't have to putt in the wind this week. So maybe that'll just, automatically fix things for him in close.
What I was surprised about with him was he gained over 2 strokes on approach, and that included going OB on his second shot on number 9, which was the easiest hole on the course. He flew the green and put it out of bounds. I don't know what that shot was worth, but it was like minus. It had to be -1. It had to be.
I think it was like minus 2.6 or something like that. It was really, really bad. Very much agree. And I think McCarty's a strong play and a very good fit for this golf course. Also in just a kind of a convenient price range where he's not going to be like automatically in the price range that a lot of lineups land on, but he also helps basically any type of lineup construction. So really solid play this week.
So Valimaki was rating out really well. I don't know how I feel about him right now, but if we go to 76 and 77, you can go like Nick Taylor, Michael Kim to end your lineup if you really wanted to. And then there's your Scottie lineup.
Yeah, that to me, that's a lot better than the let's go super cheap and then try to jam in an 8K guy.
Oh, I don't see that big of a difference, at least at this point of the season. Obviously, pedigree-wise, a lot of these 8K plays are better, but Nick Taylor does his best golf earlier on in the season. He's going for the slam, all of the early season tournament slams. He's got Phoenix, he's got Pebble Beach, he's got Sony. So this would fit in for the types of courses where he would play well, and a great course history here. I don't see what differentiates him right now than Ricky. Like, why is Ricky Fowler $700 more expensive than Nick Taylor?
Exactly. I think when you look at this group, like Nick Taylor and Michael Kim are a lot closer to Minwoo Lee, Davis Thompson, Jason Day, Højgaard than they are to Tom Hoagie and the other goobers around that mid 6K price range. So that's why I also lean to this type of construction.
There's also, I bet on Alex Smalley this week. Can he make enough putts? Probably not, but he plays these like die layouts really, really well. He's coming off a good week, and just overall, like his tee to green is so consistent. And when I did look into it on his Poa Travala splits, that's the like one spot where he actually gains putting. So why not roll him out here? Him and Doug Gim, like those two guys.
Interesting. And also you've got Homa here. So if you want to take a shot on him bouncing back this year from Go, like, there's a chance that Max Homa is not this price and ownership combo at all for the rest of the season. If he plays well here, he's immediately going to get a bump in either ownership or price or both. And if he plays well for the next month, like he's going to be, a 9K player in this type of field for the rest of the entire season. So you have opportunities early in the year to really buy low on players that struggled last year relative to their long-term form.
What do you make on the skill sets that you need here? Because I did notice, I went to the rabbit hole, and Fantasy National is being like intermittently updated Tuesday and Wednesday. So depending on what time you go on the site, it might be weird, but the login should start working and rolling out. I think the first wave was sent out that when you go to log into Fantasy National, your access to the rabbit hole should be activated right now. It's a bit wonky. Day one putting it out there. Hopefully by Wednesday, everything is resolved. But if you're not finding it there, you should be able to find it on Rabbit Hole. And one of the main things that I found looking through a lot of the stats is guys ripped driver at the stadium course way more last year than basically any other year in history. It was kind of jarring to look at.
Yeah, I wonder if that is related to the fact that the greens were new. And so when you get these new greens, they're compacted. It takes them years to settle. So you get firmer greens on average. And then it obviously helps to have a wedge that you can really spin into that firm green instead of an 8-iron or something like that. So I definitely think that that's probably related. But I also think it's just true that guys are realizing through data analysis, like most of these guys now have data guys that they really rely on, that it's usually the better play to rip driver unless there's like an actual kind of squeezing of the fairway and a lot of trouble comes into play. And if that's not the case, as it isn't on most of these holes, it pays to be super aggressive.
Yeah, the most difficulty you're going to find at this course, there's going to be weird sight lines at the stadium course because it's a Pete Dye course and it'll try to mess with your mind, but not to the extent of most Pete Dye courses. There are water hazards around, so you want to avoid those. The other things, I guess, would be there's a bunch of sand, but it's really only one bad bunker that, unless you're William Mao, that everyone else tends to avoid going for it in 2 in that par 5. I think it's number 16. And then there's just weird mounds everywhere that can fuck people up.
Yeah, it's different than a lot of golf courses where you have to like avoid bad shots because those bad shots can be really penalizing and force you into situations where you really need to play well to save par or things of that nature. This golf course is more about you need to hit quality shots just so that you continue to have birdie opportunity after birdie opportunity, knowing that the field is going to have birdie opportunity after birdie opportunity. So anytime that you get yourself out of position, it's not necessarily that saving par is tough. It's just that you're losing strokes almost every single par that you make because so many guys are going to give themselves opportunities on every single hole.
2 more things. Smash the like to this episode, sub to Mayo Media Network. That would go a long way. Help share the show around, all that fun stuff. My cheat sheet will come out for free if you are a sub to the Mayo Media newsletter. Get that down in the description. Get the email sent directly to you. I will go over that on the live show. Plus, I have the show with Keith coming out on Wednesday morning. That article will also be up on betspertsgolf.com. Again, completely free, and that's where you can get the rabbit hole. But a question for you, James. From James to you, Alex. With no strokes gained data, how do y'all model the event? I feel like I should go lighter on DFS this week because I don't know how, quote, reliable projections will be. There are strokes gained data. It's just for only 2 of the 4 rounds because they're going to play that course twice. And the other ones just assume everyone is making birdies.
This is one of the like huge advantages that we have at FTN with the course fit model strategy that we have. We don't need strokes gained data from within the event to run our course fit model exactly the way we usually do. Again, because we're building a strokes gained profile for every single player coming into every event from, I think we used the last 8 years or something like that. And so we know, like, okay, in 2023, this skill set was more predictive and this skill set was less predictive. And then in 2024, so we can say what skill sets translated to success every year. We don't need strokes gain data from within the event because all we're trying to predict is how well they do overall. And then we combine like each year and get this one big giant model. And so that type of analysis, when you're looking at like, okay, what skills did people separate in within the event? Again, that only helps you, like, let's say it's putting. It only helps you if you can actually predict who's going to gain the most strokes putting that week. And that's a lot harder to do than just figuring out which skills translate into success in a given week.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think you can, weirdly, for an event like this, you can eyeball a lot of it. Like if you know who's good and who's bad and what guys do well and don't do well as a part of their overall skill set, or even just random form. I think that someone like Ryan Gerard is a very interesting topic this week because historically he's just god-awful on the greens. But if these are easier greens, plus the form that he comes in with where he's starting to make a few mid-range putts, overall his tee to green game is just outstanding, that he is the type of guy that could just, boom, win this tournament, like when Johnny Vegas won it.
Yeah, 100%. I think a really good example, I was trying to think of an example a moment ago and couldn't. So I've got a good example now is like, let's say you know that in order to win in a given week, say a random course, not necessarily this week, that you're going to have to gain a lot of strokes with your irons. Well, a lot of people would assume, okay, so iron play is going to be the most predictive. But actually, it might be driving accuracy because it might be that anybody can really spike with their irons in a given week. But the key is you need to give yourself that opportunity to do so. And you only have the opportunity to do so if you're driving the ball accurately. Whereas the best iron player in the field might not have an opportunity to game with his irons if he's consistently in fairway bunkers or in the trees, like at Heritage, for example. So there's that like key difference between what is descriptively important and what is predictively important. And in our models, we make an effort to make them all as predictive as possible, which of course that's the game we're in, right? We're trying to predict who does well, not describe who has done well in the past.
So that is the Scheffler lineup that we went with. We're going to get to the optimal lineup plus underdog drafts and more lineups in different types of construction right after this. Underdog's expanding the game. You already know their player picks. Pick higher or lower on player stats. Today, Underdog prediction markets are live in 25 states. Back your squad with spreads, handicap for closer game, or totals, higher, lower combined score, combined with player picks for bigger payouts. New customers play $5 on fantasy, get $75 in fantasy bonus entries. Code Mayo. Team picks, player picks, all on Underdog. Eat better, train smarter. Maybe stop pretending frozen mystery meat is good enough. And honestly, starting strong is the easiest way when the food doesn't suck to get yourself ready to start the new year. That's where Omaha Steaks comes in. Premium, perfectly portioned protein shipped straight to my door. No guessing, no waste, just legit quality that actually fuels what you're trying to do. I loaded up on their USDA certified tender steaks and gourmet burgers, threw a couple fillets on the grill, which is out my back door, and there's not that much snow, so I can access it pretty easily. Salt, pepper, done, instantly tender. Way more flavor, better texture, zero stress compared to anything I've really cooked before. Let Omaha Steaks deliver high-quality proteins right to your door. Visit omahasteaks.com and get an extra $35 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. That's OMAHA steaks.com, promo code MAYO. Terms apply. See site for details. Welcome back. Talking to Alex Blickle from FTNFantasy.com. Remember to smash like while you're here, and I will be here on Wednesday morning with Keith Stewart. I will be live talking to you guys on the chat, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Mayo Media Network. Everything will be up on the pod feeds afterwards. So if you're listening on the pod feeds, please rate and review. Always goes a long way, completely free to do as well. I threw in the optimal lineup from the Rabbit Hole Optimizer right now, and here's what it looks like. It's got Seb Straka and Siwoo in the 9s, then down to Kitayama at 77 apiece. You got Bez and Hoey, and then it's Wacky Valimaki coming in at $7,300. Would you expect to see more of this type of lineup or the type of lineup that we made a little bit earlier?
It's a really good question. I don't think we're going to see this type very often because I think a lot of the Scottie fades are going to land on Ober, Griffin, Burns, Henley, where they're not going quite this balanced. I mean, this is a super, super balanced line. I don't think we're going to see many that start with Sepp Straka, but I do think this is a really solid lineup. I'm not surprised at all that it projects well. All of these guys project well for us over at FTN as well. And some of these guys like Straka, I definitely think are going to be under-owned. So it's not even like this lineup is too chalky either.
Yeah, I like Taylor better than I like Bez, so I'll just swap him out, and I could probably find someone else for Valimaki if I really wanted to as well. What do you make of Zalatoris?
Ooh.
I don't. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect from him. I haven't heard many reports of like how long has he been at full strength and really practicing. So I don't have any information there. I think he on the one hand does fit the category of the type of player that I like to look for early in the season, of guys who are just like super underowned because they might be a lot better now than they were when we last saw them. Because they're, long term that they're better players than the guys they're priced around. The issue is around Zalatoris, we also have like Wyndham Clark, and we've got Keith Mitchell and Harmon and Sam Stevens. So we have a lot of like really quality players, including someone like Wyndham Clark, who also has that like very clear ceiling if he can regain some form that he had in years past, but is also like not coming off a major injury. So I'd rather just go to Wyndham Clark, but yeah, he's intriguing because if he is his usual self, then he's massively underpriced and underowned.
Zalatoris makes for a much better DraftKings play than he does any sort of bet, frankly, because even when you take the optimal profile of Zalatoris, this is not an event he wins.
I could not agree with that more. And also the betting markets, like they don't really give us a huge discount on Zalatoris because they're always kind of afraid of him just spiking out of the blue. I think it was at Riviera where he made his first start after a while. Maybe it was last year, might have been the year before. And he like immediately was in contention. Maybe played kind of poorly in weeks after, but I feel like the books have been scared of him ever since, where they just say, I don't care how long he's been out, I don't care how poorly he's been playing, we're not posting a really high number for him.
Zalatoris is weirdly in that Scottie camp where the harder the course, the more I would like him. At an easy course, it's just not a spot where I want to take him.
Yeah, and it's really clear to understand why with him, right? Like he's a terrible putter and an elite ball striker. And also I think like the part that people might overlook with him is he's also not great around the greens. So where is he going to be best? It's when he is consistently hitting greens and avoiding the short game where other players in the field are missing greens and having to lean on the short game.
Or places where around the green can just be relatively tough to even great around the green players. Places like Torrey Pines, Bay Hill would be another one. That's why he plays well at the U.S. Open, I'm convinced. Even Cam Young is very much in that same boat where when the thicker that you get the rough, the harder it is to have precise chips. You know, he can get it to 5 feet. It's just he can get it to 5 feet from anywhere or 10 feet from anywhere, no matter what the condition is, where other guys might put it to an inch or chip it in. When they get dealt with the 2-inch, 3-inch rough, they just can't get it close either.
Yeah, very true. And I'll add that sometimes, like especially at Muirfield Village, for example, your ability to chip the ball close is usually more about the shot that you left yourself. Are you below the hole with room to work, or are you above the hole and just totally short-sided with nothing? And Zalatoris, being the ball striker that he is, he's also a really good course manager, is really good at missing in the right spots.
He also played really well at the Ned Bank, iron-wise. He wasn't really in the mix come Sunday, but I thought that was interesting that his first start was in South Africa in December, and he tended to play pretty well.
Yeah, it was good to see that he you know, this at least isn't his first start in 8 months or whatever it's been. So that's encouraging, and the iron play was encouraging. I think personally what I would like to see from Zalatoris before I start backing him again is the last time we saw him off injury, his speed was way down relative to the speed he had off the tee pre-injury. So I think that's the main thing that I'll be looking for with him is, does he have his speed, or is it going to take a while for him to get that back? And maybe the answer is he's never going to get it back because he's now moved to a swing that's going to protect his low back the way obviously his old swing did not.
So I've bet Siwoo Kim this week. I bet him at 40-1. He's down to 28 in a lot of spots right now. However, if you go to coolbet.com, you're in Canada, outside of Ontario, you can get Coolbet. I think you can get it in like Norway too. If you happen to be watching from Norway or Sweden or anywhere in Scandinavia, Coolbet's got you covered. Estonia as well. Maybe some places in South America, but primarily Canada outside of Ontario. The PME boost has him back up to 40-1, what I originally bet him at, if you want to go take him there. He's already won at this event. He played pretty well last week, and we think about spike-type players. He's the perfect spike-type player. He might miss the cut. He might come in first, but Straka was super interesting. I had no real interest in Straka, despite him rating number 2 in the modeling that I did, but he's dropped to 50-1, 55-1 in some. What is going on here?
That's surprising because we haven't seen many players in the world spike the way Straka does, where he can compete with Scottie. He can compete with like in any, you know, signature event when he's got his A game. So certainly when Scottie's the only truly elite player in the field, if Sepp has his A game, he basically has to beat one guy. So yeah, I don't understand why he's fallen so much. And at first glance, it seems like he's going to be relatively low owned on DraftKings as well, which is really intriguing.
What I thought was really strange was we've seen Scottie fall down the board. He went from an open of around plus 250. He's now plus 310. Like, that's not huge, but percentage-wise, based on his opening odds, it is. Everyone else has fallen to at least 22-1, and Griffin's up to 24-1. Henley's at 22. Bobby Mack's at 24. Harry Hall has slid down the board. Fitz is almost 40 at this point. Cantlay and Burns open below 20-1. They're now above 30-1. Do you have a preference for any of these guys, like for an outright bet this week? Or are you someone who subscribes to the theory that out of this course, you really want to linger in that 50 to 100 zone?
So the problem for me is we actually have Scottie at 33.6% to win, which would put his fair price at like 200 plus 200.
There's no way you can believe that though.
I don't think he's quite that likely to win. I think we have it inflated just because he's again, like a projection model is going to use the data that's available to it, right? And so we're using a lot of last season's data. There's very clearly an effect on super easy golf courses that we're not capturing in our simulations. There's probably an effect of just how much has Scottie played? I don't know. So there's an uncertainty element that we're not capturing. So I don't think he's truly plus 200 to win this tournament. But the problem is because we have such a high percentage of the events in our simulation being won by Scottie, it makes it really hard to find value on anybody else. So I think I personally only have one bet so far this week, and it's at 250 to 1. I'm hopeful that I'm going to add more than that, but it wouldn't shock me if that's all I end up with this week. And it's obviously easier to do that when I also have the fun of DFS and DraftKings on my horizon than if I was just someone who only bet in the week. But yeah, that's kind of how I see this week. And again, like I'm not betting someone at 250 to 1 just because a lot of long shots in the past have won here. I don't think that that's super predictive, but I'm betting someone 250 to 1 because I think that's almost the area where it's like we're more likely to see a sportsbook has made a mistake on somebody.
Who is it?
Dan Brown.
Oh, so it is Dan Brown. Okay. Love Dan Brown. Your Euro data really coming into play here.
Yeah. And so like he's one that every single event, I literally go player by player and make manual projections for guys who we don't have full shot link data on. So he's one that like I have to ask myself, are we showing a lot of value because I did a bad job in the manual projections or did I do a good job and found the guy that has the most value in the outright market this week? I don't know what the correct answer is there, but I very much like what I see, not just from a strokes gained perspective from him, but like the shape of his distribution. I like the fact he's spiking a ton with his iron play, spiking a ton with his putter, and maybe he hasn't put those together a ton, but is it more likely that a guy who spikes a lot in both does so in the same week than somebody who, rarely spikes with the putter or rarely spikes with the irons? Of course. So I like what I see from him beyond just a strokes gain standpoint.
So we can go over to the simulations that we have at the rabbit hole right now, and ours are a little bit different. We have Scottie at 16.33% to be the winner, with Griffin and Henley just below. It's Ben Griffin at 3.9%, Russell Henley at 3.3%. I bet on Russell Henley at 25 to 1. I thought those were weird odds for him, especially at Open, considering he was an overwhelming favorite last week. And then all of a sudden, Ben Griffin's ahead of him on the odds board. That didn't make any sense to me. Then it's Kitty and Cantlay, if people are wondering.
Yeah, I think that we're probably both wrong about Scottie, and he's like dead in the middle at like 25% or 22%. But yeah, it's interesting. Like even like we have drastically different win probabilities for Scottie. Our top 40 and made cut odds for him are almost identical. So that's where you see like it's so much harder to project wins than it is top 40s and made cuts, because you're talking about like median outcomes, and with the win odds you're talking about outlier outcomes and tail outcomes of the distribution for all these guys. So that's why, like personally, I think you and Jeff the other day had a conversation about how it's really hard to find guys who are like there truly is value on them in the outright market. I actually think we do find value in the outright market quite a bit, just because it's really hard for sportsbooks to accurately say if a guy is 0.4% likely to win or 1.2% or 0.8%. It's so much harder to get that type of probability correct than 55% versus 60%, as they're often doing with money lines and things like that.
Sure, but what you're talking about is the guys like Dan Brown at 250 to 1. Very rarely, no matter what his odds are, Patrick Cantlay is going to be overvalued in the odds market, regardless of what his odds are always going to be worse than whatever his win probability is, because they're taking so much hold in that market.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah, 100% correct. And it's why if you we have a bet tracker over at FTN. If you look through my my past bets in the outright market, you're not going to see a whole lot of guys in that 30 to 1 range or shorter than that. You're going to see guys 50, 70, 100, 120. And every now and then you get someone like a 250 to 1 Dan Brown that I have this week.
If you go to the rabbit hole right now, actually up on the screen, if you take a look at it under the expert models, you can find the one I'm looking at it right now. Vincenzi has one in there. Joe has one in there. Ron has one in there. Noonan, Andy has them all in there. You can pick who you want. You can make your own and set them up the way that you want. But I made mine. Scottie's obviously number one. If you ever make a model and Scottie's not number one, do you just throw it in the trash?
Yes. I think you and I talked about this in the fall on one of these shows, where a really good way to kind of gauge how strong a model is look at the outliers. Does the outlier have any, merit in being where they are? If they do, okay, you're working with something good. If it's pretty clear to you that no, this guy should not be up here, then you're doing something wrong, and chances are you're overvaluing a really small sample somewhere.
So Matt Kuchar comes out third, which I think is a nice discussion to have about outliers, but that could just be based on the tournaments that he has been choosing to play and his overall consistency and the types of inputs that I ended up putting in. But he's been playing some pretty good golf.
He has. Where I really like Kuchar is basically anywhere where around the green play really spikes in predictive value. So he does fit that mold. Of course, I would like around the green play to spike where it's like at the expense of ball striking or something like that. So we don't get that. But if you need a guy who can make 20-footer after 20-footer this week, yeah, Kuchar fits that mold for sure. So he would definitely qualify as the kind of outlier that I'm okay with. And I think, okay, there's probably something to that, and not, I need to start over with my model.
Well, he also rates out really well in the key wedge ranges. Like you get him 150 and in, and dude is absolutely deadly. And these three are three of the courses where he's actually going to be in that bucket a lot more often than he is in most courses.
Yeah, 100% with there too. He honestly might still be the best wedge player on tour. His wedges are ridiculously good. And this is the kind of golf course, as you said, where the fact that he's so short off the tee isn't going to mean that he gets, 10 fewer wedges than some of the longer guys in the field.
So some of the guys at the bottom, we were talking about the goobers that you can put with Scottie. So the best one in the 6Ks right now for my modeling is Matt Kuchar. After that, it is Andrew Putnam at 63, Justin Lauer at 62. Basically dudes who fill it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think where's Chris Kirk for you?
Chris Kirk rated out like not well, even though I bet him at 200 to 1 to win this event. Where's Kirk? Kirk is 42nd in this, but where does he get penalized? He gets penalized in strokes gained total. You can click on it to see all the filters on very easy and easy conditions. And like I just did like an overall of like, hey, what is this course? And like when we think about it, it is easy or very easy in terms of scoring. It's short to average. Mainly, there's not even really average. It's short or very short. And it's a mixed driver or less than driver for a lot of these guys. For Chris Kirk, it might be a driver, but he's one of the more accurate guys out there that he kind of hits his driver as most guys hit their 3 would.
Yeah.
And he rates poorly in that.
I'm surprised he's not better just because of how good he is with his wedges. But yeah, I mean, you pointed to some very real concerns with him. One thing that I would mention with these like custom model type things, and I think you're doing a really good job here where you don't have anything over like 15% weight. So it's less of a concern for you and just more like a general observation for people. You want to be really careful that you're not double counting things. Mm-hmm. So for example, like if you have a filter for really short courses and then also have a huge weight on wedge play, you're kind of double counting, right? Because you're already getting a lot of that wedge play signal from the fact that you're only looking at short courses where wedge play takes on a premium role automatically. So you don't necessarily need that second filter in there. But since you only have it 15%, I don't think it's much of a concern for you. But that's the kind of thing that could help explain like why, someone who you expected to be really high in your model maybe isn't. It's because maybe he's not good where you're double counting.
I think that you want to have all of your core elements in of where guys are really good, but I overemphasized wedges here because I do think that wedges are the most important thing that you're going to find if you want to get to minus 30.
100%. Yeah. You're going to need to hit the ball close with your wedges. You're going to need to, it's like we talk about the fact that you need to make a lot of putts. But who's going to make more putts from 15 feet? The guy who has 8 opportunities per round or the guy who has 4 opportunities per round? Even if you're a much worse putter than the guy who has 4, you're going to make more if you have 8 opportunities to his 4. So yeah, wedge play being so prevalent in your model, I think makes a lot of sense.
So overall proximity from 100 to 150 yards past 18 months, it's Kuchar, Putnam, Scottie, Kirk, Henley. Those are your top 5. Burns, Streelman, Straka, Griot, Denny, Doug Gim, Nick Taylor. McGreevy's an interesting one. I'm not really, and there's your boy, Ricky Fowler, coming in at number 15. So another key to him. David Ford, I was going to say Doug Ford, but he's dead. So David Ford. This guy was not the crack-smoking mayor of Toronto. But at $6,500, I played him last week. He ended up making the cut, tried to go on a little bit of a run and got stymied. His putting is very inconsistent, but his pedigree of play, he is someone that I would like to buy at $6,500 because in a year's time, he's probably $8,200 at this event, or he's off the tour.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that we didn't have much of a sample size for, so I had to do his projection manually, and I was very, very impressed with the ball striking. As you said, the non-ball striking leaves some to be desired, and you're going to need an outlier performance from him on and around the greens for him to really make way this week. But I'd rather need a spike week in those categories than in the ball striking categories. He's likely to give you some really good ball striking.
Now, he's never been on this putting surface as a PGA professional, so that there's that. Maybe something can come out of it, but the ball striking has been really good. And obviously, as you mentioned, the chipping and putting is just an absolute travesty. When he came third in Utah, he did gain on the greens there, but I'm so excited to go play that course because it just seems so weird.
Yes, very much so. When are you playing it?
In May.
Oh, very lucky.
Lucky.
I love that area. I played Q School one year in St. George, Utah, and that whole area was just spectacular. I loved everything about it. The hiking in between rounds and the golf were all great.
How is the elevation different? Sorry, like at that part of Utah, or is that like the lower part?
No, we were up there. We were up there. It was I got there, I think, like 4 days in advance. And the first 3 days, I maybe played like max 9 holes, and I was just grinding on the range trying to recalibrate all my numbers because it's really hard. And I think like one of the strange things is it was also a really windy week. So when you're trying to hit different types of shots to play in the wind, like think of all the different types of shots we saw last week at the Sony. It's like understanding that the adjustment that you have to make for elevation is drastically different when you're trying to flight something low versus when you're hitting a really high spinner. Like that was the hardest part for me. Just getting the stock shot adjustment, that was, maybe a half hour approach. And then everything else just took like literally 2 full days to really feel comfortable about how far every single type of shot was going to fly.
So the high spinner would go farther.
Oh my God. It didn't come down. It looked like it was just going to stay in the air forever.
Don't worry. I don't have that shot. So don't worry about that. I play a very low ball flight.
Well, so the other interesting thing is like when you have that low elevation, think about like why a slider doesn't break as much at Coors Field or a curveball doesn't break as much as Coors Field. It's because the spin actually has less of an effect. So I would hit like a high spinner, or I'd hit, let's say, a low spinner, and I think, okay, because of how much spin this is going to have, it's going to hold in the air, and it would just fall out of the air. So like that was a really, really weird thing to see, where it looked like this like low spinning shot was a knuckleball, but I know it wasn't a knuckleball. So yeah, it was a kind of a really interesting experience. I'm glad I had. I didn't play very well. I didn't make the adjustment very well, but it was really cool to see. And like now when I hear Phil Mickelson or Bryson DeChambeau or any of these guys like Jordan Spieth, when they really nerd out, if you will, on how they're reading the lie and the spin, it's like, okay, I have some experience now to really actually know what they're talking about instead of just feeling like they're, speaking gibberish or a whole nother language.
Let's try to build one more DraftKings lineup and try to put together. So we've ran an optimal, we've ran a Scottie, but let's try to put it together our optimal of how we think that I know you do a lot of work both on FTN and with Tambo over at Ship It on, the 20 max or single entry. Let's try to think about this from a single entry perspective, because you don't need to take as many chances. That how would we go about this? Because I said I didn't want to play Scheffler. I'm kind of good with not playing Cantlay or Ludwig either. I would prefer to start Griffin Henley.
I really like Griffin. Griffin definitely separates in our projection model as like the pretty clear second best player in the field. So I like starting there.
Do you mind Henley? Because I think that Henley and Griffin are two sides of the same coin to me. I think that they're very similar type players.
They definitely are. I don't mind Henley at all. I think because they're both going to be popular, I'd prefer to have a second guy up top who's more contrarian than Henley. But let's see. Yeah, I think Siwoo will fit that. Straka would fit that. Hall and Harris English, I think, both fit that. Burns, Cantlay. I don't really want to play Cantlay either, though. So, yeah, I think any of those names sounds like Siwoo might be our guy.
Yeah, Siwoo's pretty. I mean, we could try to do this Griffin, Siwoo, Straka, because we've mentioned a lot of names that if we do take one of those $6,500, $6,700 guys, that gets us back access to that mid sevens, where we said there's really no difference between those guys and the mid eights. So that could be a potential strategy as well. And we don't even have to go down that low. Like we could use your boy Dan Brown. We could use Mac Meisner. Hell, we could use anyone down here. Chandler Phillips. He loves birdies. Our guy, David Ford. Like you could use one of those guys. Or do you think that's too aggressive for a single entry?
No, I don't think it's too aggressive. I think a really kind of key point to make here, Pat, is we just put in 3 really, really good players. And notice we have the same average remaining salary. In fact, a little bit more than what you have when all you put in is Scottie Scheffler. So when we're talking about like, okay, why is it that maybe we don't want Scottie in our lineups? Because would you rather have Scottie plus 7K plus 7K or Griffin, Siwoo, Straka? To me, it seems pretty clear that this is the stronger way to build. And it also means that, we have at least 2 guys here who are contrarian enough that if they go contend, they're really helping us separate from the field. Whereas, if Scottie goes and wins, it's good. Like you need that to happen, but he's not helping you separate from the field because 40% of the field also has him.
So we can go McCarty, Nick Taylor, a $6,700 guy. Is that a way that we can assess this? And we can start at Lee Hodges. Your boy Dan Brown is right there. Bud Colley's right there. Finau is $6,600, which is hilarious to me.
Oh my God. I didn't even notice how cheap he was.
Him and Tom Kim, both $6,600.
Yeah.
Like McGreevy.
Yeah, I noticed Tom Kim, and I agree with Tom Kim being there. Finau being there is crazy. How did Finau play last week? I didn't even notice.
Pretty sure he missed the cut.
Yeah, obviously it wasn't good because I would have noticed if it was good, but was it awful or was it? Oh God, it was awful.
Let's see here. Mr.
He lost over 2 strokes with his irons. He was bad off the tee, over a stroke per round lost with the putter. Yeah, we did not get any signs whatsoever of the good Tony Finau returning.
No, so let's cross him off the list. McGreevy is kind of the opposite of that, though. I thought McGreevy is someone who doesn't like McGreevy at all. I thought that he had a very underratedly good week, and it just didn't really translate to the leaderboard because he ended up missing the cut, but he didn't drive the ball all that well. He lost almost 4 strokes putting in 2 rounds, and that's kind of what he's been good at recently, is actually making a ton of putts, but he gained a bunch on approach last week. Like he gained almost 3 strokes on approach in 2 rounds and just gave more than that back on the greens. That seems suboptimal for the Sony. That would be horrible this week. I just find it hard to believe that he would lose that many strokes putting again this week.
Yeah, and again, like it can't be overstated how hard it is to putt in those super windy conditions, and especially for someone like I don't personally know off the top of my head what McGreevy's putting stance looks like, but someone with a narrow putting stance is always going to be more likely to struggle in the wind because it literally knocks you off balance. So it's not fun to putt when you're off balance. So the chances that he bounces back in that way certainly quite good this week. What do you think of Michael Brennan?
I would be more willing to take a shot on him in the outright winner market than play him at $6,700. He's sort of the opposite of what we said about Zalatoris to me, because I think he's like 500 to 1 to win now.
Yeah, I very much feel like the ceiling for him is well above anyone else in this price range, and we did see like even. It was a windy, narrow, short golf course, and he still found a way to dominate off the tee last week, gaining like over 30 yards to the field and hit well more fairways in the field. So definitely still am in on the skill and long-term, outlook for Brennan, but That doesn't necessarily mean that this is the type of course where he's going to separate. So yeah, it might be better off waiting for like a tough golf course where you can actually really separate from the field with your driver in a way that you can't here. Like maybe we use him at the farmers, for example.
Yeah.
But
There's a bunch of guys. There's a bunch of guys here that like, oh yeah, no, just wait till Farmers. Like it'll be fine at Farmers. I won a huge, I think it was like 100-1 top 40 parlay last year, and it was just a bunch of guys like, oh yeah, anytime you can spray the ball wherever you want, like those are the guys that you want.
yeah, and with Brennan, like it's not just how far he hits it; it's how ridiculously accurate he is, given how far he hits it. But yeah, that in and of itself is not going to help you here. He still has to then hit the wedge shot close, and I'm not entirely sure that he can do that.
Like Bridgman's another one I would look at, but he's too expensive for right now. So I think for me, it comes down between Hodges and your main man, Dan Brown. And
for me, it'd be Brown, but I have no issue if you go Hodges here.
Yeah, we use Dan Brown in another one. So, and again, with Brennan, I don't think that you need to differentiate in a single lineup so much with a guy. Like, is anyone going to go back to Michael Brennan this week?
No.
Do you need a 1% guy in the lineup? Probably not.
You don't. I think it's actually like another really good discussion point. The type of lineup to play Brennan is if you have Scottie and you really do need to find like meaningful differentiation from this group with Scottie, because you know that everyone else that has Scottie is also picking literally 5 guys from this price range. So that's the type of lineup to use Brennan. When we're deviating from Scottie, we don't need to do that.
What do you make of Noren this week? I like Noren enough, but I don't know. Just he doesn't stand out to me as much as some of the other guys. So like even in his range, like would I play him over Kitayama? Probably not. I would play him over Pendrith. I'd play him over English, and I'd play him over Harry Hall for sure. But I don't want to play those guys anyway.
I don't want to play Noren. I think, the point that we've made a bunch already, the show is like, there's a clear distinction between guys who play really well on hard courses and guys who are more likely to play well on easy courses. Noren is definitely someone who plays better on hard courses. And also you look at his wedge play, it's not exactly enticing. So the chance that Noren goes super low just doesn't stand out as, something that I want to play into when I know he's going to be a popular pick.
Now, that said, he ranks 20th in that model I built that overemphasized wedge play where he sucks, and still ranked 20th.
Again, though, I don't think that you are necessarily overemphasizing wedge play because you only have them at 15% each.
15%.
Someone else might have that at 50%.
Yeah,
they don't have a bunch of other categories like you do, and they have it filtered to those short courses where they think they're getting a 50% weight on it, but they might accidentally be getting like an 80% weight on it because they have that filter on as well.
I want to take a look at Johnny Kiefer just for a second to see how he did last week. Man, his tee to green was legit last week. Again, his ball striking at least. He couldn't chip or couldn't putt, but whatever. That can come. He really can't chip is the one thing we've learned about him so far.
Yes, he was on featured groups, and I was very impressed by what I saw. And actually, there was one par 5. I can't remember which one it was, where he came up. I think it was 18. He came up like 40 yards short of the green, maybe 30 yards short of the green. The pin was all the way up, and there was like a weird swale where he couldn't carry it to the green because he was downwind. And he played this like low bump shot, landing on like a side slope, and then had that slope really kill the speed, hit it to like 6 feet, and made the birdie putt. And like that was, for someone who doesn't have very good around the green numbers, like that was a really encouraging sign to me, just that at least he has the creativity and the shot making around the greens where he has a chance to be better in the long run around the greens than the numbers we're seeing so far.
That's an interesting distinction to make because I feel like Zalatoris is that way too. Like if you were to take like the around the green numbers of Victor Hovland and Will Zalatoris, that they would probably look pretty similar. Although Vic always looks lost, but you watched some of the, like, I think that's why at Augusta, Zalatoris has learned how to chip around that place because you don't have to hit conventional chip shots where you do at a lot of places where, you're not Justin Thomas hitting the spinner that stops directly at the hole and almost goes in every single time. Like he's so good at that. Will Zalatoris is not. Obviously, Vic isn't either. But when you get him at spots where you can play those like weird bumps, some people just tend to see that a little bit different. Like Scottie's probably the best at it that I can think of right now, where he plays like 2 bumps off of a hill and just peels towards the hole. Like no one else is playing that shot. But like Zalatoris is the type of guy who would do that. I don't think that comes into play this week here.
Agreed. I was going to make the Augusta point that you made if you hadn't. Not only Zalatoris, but also like Bubba Watson is someone who fits that. And I think Hideki is probably the current best in the world at it. But yeah, I also agree with you. This course doesn't present the same challenge, and it doesn't offer the same like ability to be creative around the greens. You just have to kind of step up and hit the chip.
So for birdie or better, just to kind of run through these guys, Kiefer's third, limited rounds. Obviously, Scottie's two, Brennan's one, again, limited rounds. But Haotong comes in at number 3, tied with Johnny Kiefer. Haotong's another one who can't hit a fairway to save his life, but he always misses right, and there's less danger right on this course than there is left. And then from there, like, who cares if he's in the rough? The rough's like an inch thick.
Yeah, I kind of like Haotong this week. I'm with you there. And he's also someone who he is not afraid to make birdies and bunches. We've even seen that on some tough courses. Like the guy is very funny for one thing, both intentionally and purposely, and unintentionally. But yeah, he's really, really not afraid to just get in a zone and kind of go with it.
All right, the other guys on this list, yeah, so you could build a pretty decent lineup if you faded Scheffler and faded Cantlay. Who is on it? He's number 8. You could be like Henley, McCarty, Kitayama, Valimaki, Akshay, and Kevin Yu. I think all those 6 guys would actually fit into a lineup. Or Haotong, probably, to save some money if you wanted to.
Yeah. And the interesting thing here is like when you build a custom model like this, even if it's not the perfect model, you're introducing like almost an element of correlation that's really hard to find in golf, right? Because if you happen to be right about wedge play being like the key predictor this week, well, now they're all going to be there for you. So you can. It's almost like you're stumbling into a correlation that you didn't know existed in the sport. So I really like this strategy and having like I think Ben Raza does this sort of thing a lot, where he talks about like skill set stacking, and I think it's more valuable in weeks where we don't have extensive data on the courses. So like when we get to a Ronimink, or when we get to a major championship where we have literally no data on a course, or a new course in the fall, that's when you really, really want a skill set stack and make that like a key part of your strategy in the week. But in any given week, you can skill set stack and have it be smart.
Well, do you put anything into guys play better in the desert? Like in those sort of conditions? Arid conditions? Because some of the Euro guys do prosper over in the Middle East, and I would guess that conditions are pretty similar.
I don't. I haven't given this one as much thought as others. Like, what is the theory behind it? So, like, what are the conditions that are overlapping on all desert courses? Because just because a course is in the desert doesn't mean that it's emphasizing the same skill sets. So, I think you have to be able to point to some kind of characteristic of all of them that could actually create that type of overlap that's really meaningful.
I think when you're dealing with drier conditions, and obviously that the putting surfaces are going to be a little bit different. When you think of tee to green, there's always, usually on desert courses, there's the good side to miss and the bad side to miss, where you don't want to be in like the rock sand over there. You want to be in like whatever like dried out rough is over here that has a bit of a sand base. Ooh, boy, there goes my tee. It's all right. We're okay. Problem solved on this end. No spillage, except for one little bit right there. Delicious stuff. I just think that when you think about like, okay, so if you miss way left here, you're in the water, you're in one of these death bunkers, you miss to the right, and then you can start playing from there, not necessarily in the fairway. You have more experience with that and the sand base that you're going to find in the rough versus some of the other places where, like, we even see a lot of, not necessarily like direct correlation, but guys that play well here tend to play well in Phoenix at the same time.
Yeah, and I think what your point about like drier conditions is a good one. I would then say like let's just look at splits on firm greens, because essentially like my point of view is I always want to get as large of a sample size as possible while still keeping the data relevant. And I think you'd probably just have a larger sample size of firm greens than desert courses, because golf is tricky that way, right? Like it's kind of crazy and mind blowing how large of a sample you need to really have this data to start to stabilize and really tell you important things about these players. So I just don't want to cut the sample size, smaller than I need to. And I worry that that's what you do when you look at something like desert splits instead of firm green splits.
That's fair. One last guy I wanted to talk about, and this kind of mixes back into the desert because he just won in the desert. Are we just underrating how good Fitz is right now?
Yeah, he seems really good. And the thing with Fitz is like, we've talked a bunch already about like the type of player who he has this like really long-term good form, then went through a stretch where he was struggling, and then now we're betting on them to, okay, well, what happens if they regain their form and we can be ahead of the curve on that guy? Well, Fitz kind of is that guy who has already regained his form. And I feel like that stretch of what was it, like a year and a half where he struggled, we can almost toss it out. He's back to the guy that he was for multiple years prior to that and has now been for 8 months, 6 months, whatever. So yeah, I think Fitz is just a really good bet to continue to play really, really good golf. And he's proven he can do it pretty much anywhere and in any kind of conditions.
Because if you actually rated this field with your own power rankings, and maybe we feel differently on that. You said the projections have Ben Griffin at number 2. I think he and Henley are very close. But if you just ask me who the second best player in this field is, I would tell you it's Matt Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I definitely have Griffin second, Henley third, Siwoo fourth, Kitayama fifth, and then there's like a bunch of guys.
Sure, but I'm just talking about overall skill. Do you think that Kitayama is a better golfer than Matt Fitzpatrick?
No, I do not. I think Kitayama might have the higher ceiling because if he can ever figure out putting, which let's be honest, like it's probably not going to happen, but if he ever figured out putting, he'd be better than what Fitz can be. But Fitz is currently the better player.
Last thing, let's try to figure out Underdog Drafts in real time. So if you go to Underdog right now, if you don't have an Underdog account, make it easy on yourself. Use code Mayo. You get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And if you play a $5 pick'em entry, you get an automatic $75 in bonus funds to use. But if you hit the draft tab right now, you're going to see a bunch of different drafts that are available to you. Click under PGA, you got the Underdog Open, the Par 3, and all of these drafts are now for all 4 rounds. It's you versus 5 others. You draft 6 guys. And there's a rake-free contest right here. It's called the Pat Mayo Classic. You get to draft 5 teams in that. There's $1,000 to first. Absolutely flat payouts because there is no rake. $1,000, $900, $850, $750. I'm not here to screw you and make it $2,000 to first and $50 per second. Alex, like I don't like to play those games. Like, give me a sustainable ecosystem with a tournament, and that just entices me to play so much more. It's $20 per entry. You get up to 5. You can spend $100 a week on this, and honestly, you probably won't need to reinvest all that often.
Yeah, I love this. I've been playing best ball and pick 'em on Underdog for years, and I'm excited to add a third element of Underdog to my game.
So let's try to get a draft going right now. Let's enter a contest, confirm my $20, and try to talk through what the strategy is here. I actually got it to work this week. Looks like we're going to be starting here any second. Just initial thoughts, because you and I were speaking before the show about the draft itself, of because you can only draft 6 players, that you're going to leave yourself, like you're not going to use any of these losers from the bottom. But we both kind of agreed that you might want to go with a 5-1 strategy of 5 good guys and then draft someone no one else has.
Yeah, you've got to find some way to separate from the field. And obviously, like the easiest way to do that is to have a guy end up in third place that was drafted on 2% of teams. So definitely want to do that, but we have to balance that with the fact that, you know, the guys who are going undrafted, usually they're undrafted for a reason. So we've got to find someone who actually has merit and has a reasonable chance of success and is going to be that low-owned guy.
I thought we were going to start soon. We're actually waiting for 5 people to join. So if anyone's in the chat wants to join like immediately, if not, you know, I should have probably queued this up a little bit beforehand and not sit here waiting for it. But I do enjoy it because I think this is like an unsolved game at this moment. Like there's going to be a prevalent strategy that emerges, but trying to figure out what that is actually quite exciting, I think.
It is. And it's also exciting that, you know, it's probably specific to the contest that you're in. And so when you're drafting in the Pat Mayo Open, you might have a different strategy than if you're drafting another contest. Honestly, like, I haven't looked at the other contests, so I don't know if they have any like massive ones where you maybe want to go even more off the board, or maybe there are some that are similarly sized, but they're super top heavy. And obviously yours is a flatter payout, which personally I like. So I think strategy might differ across contests as well. And that's fun and exciting too.
So the Underdog Open is up there. That's the big one. That's the 10K to first, max 150 entries. I tried this out last week. The problem that I encountered was I set my rankings with the guys that I wanted, but then I just ended up with all of the same guy. And I had 78% Austin Eckroat. He misses 2 putts inside 5 feet to end his second round, and all of a sudden all my teams are dead. And if you're going to draft in bulk like that, it's really hard to make rules so you don't end up with a lot of the same guys over and over.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in fact, like I would caution people from, just setting rankings and letting it auto draft, which I think is fine to do in best ball. But here, like you really don't want to have the same 2% owned guy over and over and over again. You want to have like a lot of different chances to find that 2% guy down at the bottom of draft. So definitely helps to actually be in the draft room yourself and making those picks, and then you can control like your diversification that way.
Like that's what I was able to do for the $150 best ball draft before the season, that Pat Mayo Open, that, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just drafting off of rankings for that. Like I wanted to be in that room so I could tailor those teams, because those rules were a little bit different than everything anyway, that like, okay, I don't need to be as precise in this tournament. I'm actually shooting for a lot of upside at the end.
Yep. I'm right there with you. Had the exact same thought.
How are you feeling about your best ball team so far?
I think it's a little too early to tell, but I was very pleased with how many of my guys were playing the Sony, and I think a lot of it's going to depend on like, was I correct about a lot of guys like Wyndham Clark, for example, who didn't play last week, but I have a lot of him, and now he's playing this week, and hopefully he's playing again next week, and so it's still, I think, just too early to tell because we don't know what the overall schedules are going to look like for guys. But I very much took the approach of, I know I'm not going to have the best chance of getting through round 1, but I wanted to maximize my chance of getting through round 3 and then winning round 4 if I get there. So I'm not going to have a good sense of how my best ball season goes until then, unless I am fully out of it before then and just have no teams advancing to the final.
All right, next week I will put myself in a better position to do this. I'll save one of the teams for the live stream on Wednesday evening, and you guys can draft against me in the Pat Mayo Open if it's not filled by then. But I got to let you get out of here. We spent too much time talking today, or maybe not enough time. Who can say? We got a lot of golf content coming out. What do you have going on the rest of the week?
Yeah, exciting time over at FTN Fantasy and in my Discord. It's been a really good pick'em week over my Discord. Had a bunch of hits in the NFL side of things and have a 3-pick hit in each of like the last 3 NBA slates. So it's been a lot of fun there, and you can find all my stuff, whether you want that or the GPP scores and ownership projections over at FTN Fantasy through my Twitter at Alex Blickle1.
I will be back tomorrow morning with Keith to finalize most of the betting card and get his insights of what he's hearing from the course right now, his experience at PGA West, plus the rapid fire questions that we do. Highly recommend my new show with Keith, The Last Word. It's been a lot of fun to do so far, and I think it's only going to get better as we get throughout the season and Keith gets on the road. He's going to be joining me from Jupiter because he's at TGL, so he'll be in the press room there for that show. Additionally, that live chat where I will finalize all of the bets. If you just want the cheat sheet form for everything, along with ownership, best plays, every single facet of what we've talked about during the week, sub to the Mayo Media newsletter. It's completely free. It'll get sent directly to you, or you can just check it out at betspertsgolf.com. All right. Thank you all for watching. Smash the like on the way out, and I will see you next time.